Welcome back for another episode of Sunday SoulDay, fueling your mind, body, and soul with soulful conversations and life-changing insights. Are you carrying unspoken anger, resentment, or exhaustion, but don't have a safe place to release it? So many high-achieving women are holding more than anyone realizes. We show up for our families, our teams, our communities, but somewhere along the way, we stop making space for our own emotions. On today's episode of Sunday SoulDay, I'm joined by Jennifer Grove, a venting coach, yoga teacher, and transformational guide who helps women reconnect with their bodies, reclaim their voice, and release the unhidden weight they've been carrying. Jennifer's journey from corporate accountant to yoga teacher to health and mind coach is a powerful story of resilience, awakening, and radical self-compassion. Today, she works with women who are ready to move beyond burnout and step into alignment of who they truly are. In this conversation, we explore why so many women suppress their emotions, how safe venting can become a powerful healing tool, and practices such as breath work and EFT tapping to help women release, reset, and reconnect with themselves. If you've ever felt drained, disconnected, or like you're carrying more than you share, this episode may be exactly the conversation your soul has been waiting for. Let's begin. Welcome to Sunday SoulDay, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank
I'm
you.
so excited.
I know. Likewise, thank you for joining. I'm excited to talk to you. I know that we had such a beautiful conversation, and I'm excited for the audience to get to know you a little bit better. And I'm so curious how you answer this because I have found that many purposeful leaders typically step into coaching after some transformational moment, or in some cases, like myself, a series of moments. Like, what moment kind of shaped your decision to step into this work?
Well, I think at that, you kind of said exactly how I feel I took my step toward. They were little pivotal moments. It wasn't one huge, and I think I was just on this particular journey to set me in motion to that direction of actually coaching. You know, it began back when I was in the corporate world and just struggling, stress, anxiety, anger, not even realizing what any of those emotions truly were early on in my career. And then finding a modality at that time, which was yoga, that really helped me feel the feelings. And it has snowballed, I feel, from there.
I love that you touched on a few of those emotions, including anger, which is something I think as women, we tend to not name. We name, anxiety, we name imposter syndrome and like all these things, right? But we rarely touch on the anger and
Mhm.
we almost don't even give ourselves permission to touch on that. Like, is that something that you've always been able to tap into? Has that been something that, or did you have to learn that over time?
I think I had to learn exactly what my anger was telling me.
Okay.
You know, especially as women, as young women, girls, we're emotional. We're told we're too much. We're too emotional. We're being overly dramatic. All these words where we start to shut down our emotions. And then we don't even truly know when we really are angry or what that anger is telling us.
Yes. Yes, I love that you touched on that because I think that is the key component is like, when we have all of these emotions, it's like, what is it teaching? What is it telling us? Like, where is it rooted in? Talk to me a little bit about that awakening because I know that you went off to Costa Rica and you had an awakening in Costa Rica at a retreat, which is amazing. So I can't wait to hear a lot more about that. But tell us about that. Like, when did you kind of have that and what were you doing and why did you go to Costa Rica?
So I work with mentors on a consistent basis, not just for myself, but as clients as well. And so you're in that realm of just knowing everyone. It's that RAS of our brain, that reticular activation system, where we really, when we find one thing that we're focusing on, it seems to be everywhere. And so coaches are everywhere now. And I had a business coach that I was working with, and actually I still am. She's amazing. She was hosting a retreat, and I thought, no, I want to go, but I'm not sure. And, at the last minute, I was like, all right, I'm doing this. It's going to be great. I don't know what I'm going for, what I'm going to learn. I'm just going to take it in. Let somebody kind of like give to me and allow me to receive whatever. And throughout the retreat, so many amazing women, so many conversations. There was a pivotal moment when we were asked by a speaker on stage, like something to the effect, and I really wish I could remember exactly what she said because it was so good. Um, but it was something to the effect of, you know, what do you feel like you've been holding in that you cannot say, that you have a safe space right here? And so many women were answering that question. And I thought, okay, yeah, they all sounded the same, every one of them. It was, I've always had to be the nice girl. I've always had to be polite. I've always had to follow the rules. All of these things were the exact same. And I thought to myself, are, are they serious? Wait a minute. I don't feel that way at all. I've never felt that way. And so I thought, hand raised, I need the mic. Let me tell you, because I feel like I'm standing in a group of almost 100 women, and I am the only one that feels this way. And I said, I don't agree with any of you. And it's not that I don't agree with what you say. That is your truth, but I don't feel that way. And I'm worried that I'm the only person that feels this way. And it was, I've always had to be the strong one. I've always had to be the one that has, stood up for herself, stood up for other people, stood up for my siblings, stood up for somebody at work. I've always had to be the one that showed the anger, the aggression. And it's exhausting. And afterward, I thought, nobody's going to speak to me. Everybody's going to be like, she's so weird. There's something wrong. Women were coming up to me afterward on our way to dinner and just saying, you spoke directly to me. You spoke my truth. I had no idea. I was like, I don't feel so alone now. Why don't we talk about this? And that was my pivotal moment of being like, I love coaching and I love helping people kind of find themselves. But what really ignited me at that moment was we need the ability, the availability, the space for somebody to hold us, to vent, to share our anger, and it be okay.
Yes. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful aha moment. And like in doing it, and that's what I'm talking about. It took such bravery to stand up and say something completely opposite in a room full of peers, right? Like not a lot of people would do that, which is why they came up to you after the fact, because then it was like safe for them to do. And so I love that you're creating that space for women. And it is so true. I think women, I feel like we really struggle with owning our truth, especially when it's attached to anger, because there hasn't been a safe space from us starting in childhood all the way through. We are not taught to show that. Men are. It's totally acceptable for men to show that they're upset. I mean, you think about women in sports, like let's talk about the Williams sisters. The minute that they showed anger, on the court, which is completely similar to, someone like an Andre Agassi or, any of the other male tennis players it's totally acceptable for them to show anger and they're seen as passionate. But for us, we're seen as the angry woman, and no woman wants to be seen as that. So I love that you're creating a safe space for women to start there, because I think too, like, so much of that anger gets stored, not just in our mind, but in our body, and then it stays there. And so it really prevents us from doing all the things that you want to help, your clients do as a coach, which is step into their light, step into what they really want to do.
Yes, I love that you brought up the Williams sisters and Andre Agassi, because that's exactly that was the vision that I had rolling in my head.
It is so true though. I'm like, and because I've watched them, I'm huge fans, and
Yes.
had the privilege of actually meeting them and many years ago, in Palo Alto actually. And so
Oh, okay.
I at one of their tournaments, and I'm telling you, like, they have been ridiculed, for every little thing that they do that their male counterparts do, and it's completely fine. And it's not just them, it's other women as well, and other sports as well. Think about WNBA, compared to the, NBA. Like, it's not
Yes.
as acceptable. And so, I've seen this even working in tech with women. It's like men can show that they're upset and it's completely fine, but then when a woman does, everybody gets uncomfortable.
Hmm.
So
Yes,
there's
most
just not a
definitely.
safe space for us. So I love that you're creating that. And I think too, like, is really helping women, like, I think, tap into their language, because we do not know angry language. We haven't used it, except for I'm upset, or, we might go to tears, and then we're seen as emotional. And so I think just even being able to tap into the language of anger is so powerful.
I love that you brought that up, the language, tapping into our language, the language of anger, because as you said, in the world around us, our emotions are over amplified, not just by us, but by those that are around us, family members, coworkers, strangers. It's so interesting how anger has become something that is negative, where it's loud, it's boisterous, it's over the top, right? But why can't anger be soft? Why can't anger just be something that is unheard? So I love the fact that we're now looking at anger in various ways. But I would love to see in society at some point where anger becomes softness, just like any other
It
emotion.
is. Well, and almost like acceptable, right? Where it's like you don't stay there, like,
Oh,
you don't stay in anger, but you allow yourself to get angry and then move through. And I think because women have not been taught that, they don't get to move through. So they actually stay there, and it turns into, starts at anger, but then turns into resentment. And then that resentment is, nowhere anyone wants to be, So,
ever,
and then,
ever.
yeah, and then because it festers, and then it starts affecting every other area of your wheel of life, and I think when people can't articulate, that is where the resentment comes into play, and again, like I said, I've worked in early and growth stage startups in tech, and I would see it there, I would see it
Mhm.
with women who were, resentful of their male counterparts because they couldn't articulate, or they get talked over in meetings, and they just didn't have the language. And so they would hold it in. I was one of them, like, so I
Yes.
could speak to this. So it's, and it happens in families, in relationships, where you get a stronger, partner, and he talks right over you, and then women hold it in. And so it turns into that resentment. Like, talk to me a little bit about that, because you work with high achieving women who kind of secretly carry anger and resentment. Like, why do you think so many women suppress their emotions, besides what we're talking about now? Like, what are some other reasons that they suppress them? And, like, what do you think happens when they finally get a safe space with you, and coaches like you to share?
I think one of the biggest things is with women, most definitely, we're afraid. We're afraid of what that is because we've never been taught how to handle that emotion or a lot of our emotions. There's no book that we can read from the very beginning that says you're going to go through these emotions throughout your life. It's just almost like menopause. No one talks about menopause until you're already there. So nobody talks about your anger until you're already there, because we've just never been allowed to actually work through it. And I think a lot of people don't understand, especially women, because we're told to hold on to things, we're told to be quiet, we're told to just go with the flow. It takes only 90 seconds to go through an emotion, any emotion, if we allow ourselves to flow with it. Allow yourself to be angry. Maybe it's you yelling into a pillow so that you don't yell at a coworker or your children. Maybe it's you just stomping your feet into the ground, but give it 90 seconds and that emotion is going, because the next one is right behind it. And whatever that emotion is where your anger is actually coming from. And I think we don't understand that enough. It only takes us a minute and 30 seconds. That's it.
I didn't even think about that. Just like how quick, like as think about a kid, I'm visualizing a kid with that 90 seconds. It's like,
Yeah.
even with my kids, like they'll get upset about something and then they like move through it. But something that I think kids do brilliantly that adults have forgotten is they feel all their feels. They feel
Yes.
all of their emotions, and it's like, big emotions. You talk about big emotions with kids, but I think like we taper down our emotions as adults, and it's so important to feel them, you know, in a large way and then let them move through us.
Yeah, because they're just feedback. And that's what we don't
Yes.
understand. We're so worried about what that feedback could be because
Mhm.
in our brain, right, we're worried about not being accepted.
Yes.
Because back in caveman days, if we weren't accepted, we were thrown out of the tribe and then we had to figure out how to survive. But that's not the case today. We have so much technology, we have so many people in this world. We're not going to be thrown off to the side and just forgotten about. But if we've never actually felt that safety before in our bodies, and that comes from generational trauma, it comes from our childhood trauma, it could honestly just simply be something so tiny as you wanted a lollipop at the store and your mom ignored you. And that for you became a traumatic event. So you shut down. But if we don't talk about these things, then we can't actually bring them to light and work through them.
Yeah, and I think I love that you touched on the fear, because I think that is really what holds people back in so many different ways, that fear of, and a large part of it is like made up stories that they have now held as truth. Or it could be, like you said, those moments back in time where they got an imprint of, I showed this particular emotion and then got a negative response. So now they're like, okay, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting what fear does to us, whether it's fear of the past or fear of the future, but when you're living more in a present and a loving space, like you're a lot more present and you're allowing yourself to feel all those feels. And so
Yeah.
what's so interesting, when I think about just feeling, anger, and it took me a while to even allow myself to I'm a natural Aries, so like, I will get, I can get angry and then I get over it really quickly. But I think a large part of my, I guess, growth, if you will, is like finding like more healthier ways to unpack my anger. And
Mm.
so it's like I never had, I guess, an issue feeling the anger, because I would feel it and then like, and I would allow myself, whatever happened. But I think for me, where my growth was, is I was like, okay, I want to process like where that came from, or like what was the root of that, like and then start labeling it. And it goes back to the language that we were talking about earlier. It's like really expanding my language. That was a part of my growth, so then I can understand, because there is nothing wrong with anger. And I think, but it's how you choose to use it. Now, if you're using it to harm yourself or others, then that's when it's, not a good thing. But to allow yourself to move through those emotions is where your truth is. And I think we do such a great job at lying to ourselves, especially women. We are amazing liars. I hate to say
Yes.
it, but it's the truth, you know?
The
And
phrase "I'm fine" comes out of everybody's mouth all the
yeah,
time. Yeah,
yeah.
you're not fine.
No, you're not fine at all. And but we lie, and we lie so well that we actually start to believe the lie, you know? And so and we convince others of it too, and then they just start to believe it because we keep saying it. But the problem with that is you are then betraying yourself. And so
Yeah,
that's where the tension comes in. That's where the resentment starts to build because you're constantly betraying yourself.
yeah,
And you have to be in honesty. Like that is where healing happens. So I love that you're creating this space for women because you're allowing them to be honest. That is where true transformation happens. That is where true healing happens. You know, like it has to start with honesty. You have to be honest with how you're feeling, where you're at, you know.
and asking the right questions,
Yes.
that's such an important thing. I love how you said touched on the honesty part.
Mhm.
Honesty is so important, but we have to ask ourselves the right questions and be honest about those questions
Yes.
and be okay with it. You said, it's was part of your growth and like asking what diving in, where is this coming from? What is happening? Why is this taking place? Because that trauma that we're holding on to, whether it's a little T or a big T, we're storing it in our body and our body is remembering it. Our cells are remembering everything. And so there'll be moments where someone could just be having a really good day, but then all of a sudden they're triggered by something they have no idea. And it brings up in the body because they haven't worked through it yet. Yeah,
Yeah, because the body keeps the score.
it
You know,
does. Such a good book.
it's such a good book. I talk about it often. I'm sure the audience is tired of me mentioning it, but it is such a great book because it's such a beautiful reminder that it really does. And so you wonder where those triggers come from. It's because your body kept the score of it. You haven't
Mm-hmm.
healed it. And it's really, you know, something you had mentioned earlier. It's like a messenger, you know, it's a message for you. Like if you
Yeah.
look at your triggers as messengers, like you'll stop beating yourself up, you know, because it's really a message that, okay, here's something I still need to work on. What a
Mm-hmm.
gift.
A beautiful gift.
Beautiful gift.
It really is.
It is. So now you can work on it, you know? And I'm like,
Right.
I use the analogy of a present. I'm like, now you get to open up this present, you know? This little trigger, you know,
I
that's what
love that.
beautiful present, you know, and it is. If you look at it from that perspective,
Yes.
it takes away the shame and the, you know, the pain of it all, you know. So
The trigger
yeah,
aspect that we have, that we feel,
and the
if we can just
power
look
we're
at it.
giving that trigger.
Yes, 100%.
Yes. Well, you also do, you use a lot of other like tools for transformation with your clients. I'd love to talk about that because you
Okay.
incorporate things like yoga, breath work, EFT tapping, you know, different movements and neuro-linguistic practices with your clients. Like, how do you think these modalities work together to help women kind of free themselves from rumination to and resentment to back to that authentic ease?
Well, what I found in working with clients,
Mhm.
particularly, using myself as an example, going through the phases, was that I couldn't just talk about things because then I just still felt. So I needed to be able to move the body, move that sensation, that emotion out of the body. And so I started working with the different modalities. What works best for me may not work best for someone else. Um, it you and I may have a totally different modality that works really well for us in almost the exact same situation, because that's the beautiful thing about being a human. Every one of us is unique. So it's just kind of a touch and go where we tap into particular things, like we'll do some breath work. And if somebody's feeling more triggered by that, I know that's not a good modality for them, at least not at that point in time. And we'll move into something else. But I like to kind of sandwich everything together when I'm working with a client. So we'll talk a little bit, we'll move through that emotion that we're feeling through a different modality, whether it's EFT tapping, it could be some movement, maybe it's something that their body is feeling in a very physical way, and we may do a yoga pose for a few moments. It just depends on each particular client. And then we'll go back into, okay, now they've released something. Now they're kind of ready to talk again. Okay, let's continue our conversation. And then now let's go ahead and move it again. Right.
I love that. I love that you mentioned the sandwich because I think that's such a great analogy. Like you imagine a sandwich having a lot of layers, and
Mm,
anytime you are, healing or trying to transform, people use all sorts of fun words and, to describe it. But anytime you're trying to free yourself of something, or step
mm,
into something new, it is so important to embrace a lot of different things, because what works for you when you maybe first start your
mm.
process doesn't work for you later on, like months later. Like what worked for me last year does not work for me today. And so like there's a lot of growth. And so I think just even allowing yourself to try things, so I love that you give a lot of different options for your clients to use, as opposed
Yeah.
to just saying like, okay, I'm a breathwork coach and this is what we're doing, because breathwork doesn't always work for everyone. Like in
No.
moments, in certain moments, it works for everyone, but it's not in every moment. Let me be very.
Exactly. Or the type of breath work. There's
Yeah.
different patterns of breath work
Yes,
that you can use.
exactly.
And if someone is working with a client or just, hey, I know about breath work, let's do some, it may not be the right format for that particular person at that moment, just like you said, which is why I think it's so interesting. And you hit on that, was what worked for you last year doesn't work for you this year. And, I've just recently switched something for myself and my routines that I'm like, that's not working for me anymore. I'm going to side note that. Not that I'm going to never come back to it, but it's just right now in the season that I'm in, I needed something different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have a grab bag of modalities that I tap into, and it's, I do it based over four components. And
Mm,
so the four components, I think we talked about this on
yeah.
the last call, but it was focus on the mind, the body, the soul, and the heart. So
Mm,
this is actually something I wrote about in my newsletter as well, breaking down those four components, because when you think about your leadership and having more alignment, it's so important to do things that tap into all of those spaces.
yes. So much. And we can get so caught up in only working on one particular thing. It's like, okay, we'll just take something very easy that people will understand. It's like losing weight.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just going to go on a diet. And then we go on the diet. Okay, but now we've come off the diet and we're starting to gain the weight back. Well, maybe we should have focused on what are my thoughts while I'm eating
Mhm.
this beautiful food? What shifted? Maybe I can also begin to incorporate some sort of exercise that will accommodate that. So we tend to be tunnel vision.
Yes.
We're like, okay, this one thing is going to fix everything for me. And that's just not the case. We're such complicated, unique individuals.
We are. And it's so important to understand that and embrace that. And I
Mm,
think a large part of when I have worked with leaders, even before I became a certified coach, like I've always been coaching my entire career. So I've coached thousands of people, and it's so interesting. Like people get so tunnel, they have a tunnel vision on one particular goal, and then that's what they focus on, not realizing that all of the other areas of their wheel of life might be suffering, and
mm,
so it's so important when you break it down. Like I think there's like about eight components of the wheel of life, right? but
yes.
but if you look at it, it's really broken down into those four components that I mentioned,
Hmm.
so, so yes, I love that you offer that to your clients, because I think it's really important. Like a lot of times women haven't even tapped into those things and
No.
even tried those things for themselves. And so, going on that journey is so, it's transformative for anyone that you work with. So I love that you're tapping into that.
Oh, thank
One
you.
thing I wanted to kind of talk about, because we had mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we've talked about like women giving their personal power away while seeking validation, and that's
Mm.
a large part of it, of them not stepping into their anger is their, not wanting to not be validated or to be seen a certain way. So how do you help women reclaim that power? And what differences have you noticed in men and women approaching this work?
So I think we kind of touched on it a moment ago where we, when I'm working with women, there is that space of moving through that sandwich of conversation, the modality, and what's working for them. So it allows them to really soften, which is where I went earlier when I was saying anger is softness. They intertwine together so much, but we have them on opposite spectrums of the scale. So by the time we're working together, and it could be one session, it could be multiple sessions, depending on what we're working through. Women are able to go through that array of motions and soften into what they really want to speak, their language, where they can begin to articulate without being really overly emotional or too much, as some people would say. So we weave through each individual person and how they communicate, not just with others, but with themselves. And that's where we start. Let's communicate with you, because I always love to say you are the most important person in your life. And I know I will have disagreement with that for many people. Like, my kids are more important than me, but
No.
they could not have come into this world without you.
But you can't
And
service
you,
your kids without
you
taking care of yourself. Like
exactly.
I am 100% in agreement with you on that, because and it took me a minute to shift into that, because it is like, especially women with children, small children, especially because they need us so much. We're so busy putting their needs in front of ours, but really we cannot serve from a full place if we're not pouring into our cup. And so it's
Right.
so vital. Like, if you're not doing it just for you, look at the people that you're serving, and think to myself, like, don't they deserve a more fuller version of me?
Mm-hmm.
That's what allowed me to approach it a lot more selflessly, because, we think of, self-care, and it's instantly like, oh, she's being selfish. She's only focused on herself, but it's really an opportunity for you to be self-full and fill your up.
Yes. Fill yourself up, because then you can pour into others.
Yes.
They can see that you love yourself
Yeah.
so much that you love everyone around you as well.
Exactly.
It's a mirror, it's that mirror effect.
We talk about this, right? It's like on the other,
Yeah.
like, because women, I like that you talked about like women using anger to get more soft, and what I visualize as you were talking is like a release.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's almost like you're getting to surrender,
Yes.
and that surrender allows you to then soften again, because I think that's what has always helped me, like throughout my
Mm.
my all of my years, my development years, early on, all the way through my 20s, 30s, and now into my 40s. Like, what has served me is that I don't carry it, and I release it. I
Yeah.
found healthier ways to release it, as I've gotten older and developed, but like, and then started asking myself questions. But I think that getting to that surrender is so different. I think men need the surrender, but different. So
Yes.
they show it in a different way. Like, talk to us about that difference that you've seen.
It's so funny because, as women speak more or they show more emotion, maybe even not in speaking, men tend to be more compartmentalized. For men, I've noticed if it's not in detrimental, dire need to happen at this moment, it gets put back. It's like, are we dying right now? No. Okay, great. Then we're going to come back to this later when we are. And it's in handling the two differently, women you can have conversations with, you can move them through things. With men, I've noticed moving them first through something and then talking. Men tend to feel, physically feel,
Yep.
where women, we feel, but we love to analyze first. We're talking about it, we're ruminating over it, we're calling our girlfriends,
Yep.
getting them on board with our conversations. you know um, we don't like this, we don't like that, totally agree with you. So now you've got your pack and you're all holding on to this, and then your emotions start to show up. With men, they feel it. Wait a minute, I'm feeling this right now. I'm something's happening and I need to get it. I need to let go. I'm going to go out back. I'm going to go throw the football around. I'm going to go mow the yard. I'm going to get it out. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
That's exactly what I was curious if you had the same experience, because I would say, like, with female clients, I start top down, and with
Mm,
male clients, I start bottom up.
mm,
So
yeah.
meaning like body up, And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
so it's like, so it's interesting. You have the same experience. No, that's so good. Like, I'm curious about this too, because we are so busy taking care of, so many others. And,
Oh.
sometimes even as coaches, we often forget about ourselves. But,
Mm.
I've compared self-care to the 10,000 hour rule. And the 10,000 hour
Yeah, I
rule.
love that
Oh
book.
God, well, me too. But, a practice requires consistency. And, I know we've talked about different modalities that we've done with clients and use ourselves. Like, what are your kind of go-to for daily practice? That consistent, like, these are my non-negotiables. Like, what does that
Mhm.
look like for you?
My non-negotiable, beyond a shadow of a doubt, every single morning I have a particular routine, and it has shifted a little bit because of the season, but there's a good 30 minutes that it is non-negotiable. I wake up, I have a routine. Right now, that honestly looks like me diving into my Bible first thing when I wake up, and then I'll begin to do some breath work. I'll do a little tapping, and then I start to journal. And that has shifted my routine a little bit. In the evenings, I have a particular routine. I am in my bathroom, like washing my face, moisturizing, like getting myself ready. And I'm telling you, I am in bed by 9:30 every night. I am I'm just
That
not
is
a late
amazing.
person.
I am not in bed at 9:30. I would love to try that out. I'm like, I'm usually actually up to about midnight. And
Oh,
oh
goodness.
yeah, I'm a night owl. And it's interesting. Like, I require 6 hours of sleep.
Hmm?
So if I go, and I'm up like clockwork every morning, like at 6:15. I don't need an alarm. Doesn't matter if I go to bed at 1, 2, I get up at 6:15. It's my body
That's
clock set
amazing.
to that. And so, like, it's unbelievable. Like, I keep wanting to expand that. I'm like, maybe if I go to bed a little earlier, maybe I can get a few more hours in. But for years this is what I've needed. But I'm always so curious, because I get different answers with this question, like, what are people's non-negotiables? And of course it changes, but I love that you have the non-negotiable of waking up and reading your Bible.
Mm, yeah,
Do you use things? So I use the Bible app.
I do too.
No way. Okay. I turned my mom onto that. So many people onto the Bible app. Clients, I'm like, I love that. I mean, they have really done a phenomenal job, like, over the, I think,
Yes.
last few years with the Bible app. It's incredible.
Just over the past few months, I feel like they have added a couple of new
Teachers.
tech things
Yeah.
to it. Thank you,
Yep.
features. I could not figure the word there for some reason. Um, and it's gotten even better. I
Yeah.
just absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So I'm continuously sharing it. We should be friends
Okay, I
on
love
the
it.
Bible app.
Good. Okay, good. Yes, but I love the Bible app. So I do that, and for me, like I have an hour carved out before my kids get up, and that's my hour to fill however I choose. And so my choosings are a little different each morning, but I do have my set of things that I do. And I
Mhm.
try to do everything like mindfully. So I just like I like to do things a little slower, like, take my
Mm.
time, and it feels really good, like, and it's taken me a while. I'd say going back to the 10,000 hours, of self-care. It's like I've put in a lot of work, in order to get to this place where my body not only like functions better but needs it. It's like it craves it. If I don't get it, it's like, what's going on? So
Right.
yeah,
It's giving you, those signals,
yeah, for sure.
like that little whisper, like, okay, maybe we're not feeling the best today. What's
Mhm.
going on?
Absolutely.
I used to um very mindfully, I absolutely loved it. And this was a couple of years ago, and it just stopped serving me after a while, but I would get up every morning and make my coffee. And I got rid of a coffee maker. So I bought a French press and a grinder. And that was my ritual. And I would sit there in the kitchen and just grind
Oh yeah.
beans for like 5 minutes and just meditate, like this meditative state,
Yeah.
watch the birds out of my
Yep.
window, and I would enjoy my cup of coffee.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that served me for quite a while. It started my mornings out nice and slow,
Yeah.
very mindful.
Yes,
And that,
that's how I do my mornings, very mindful. And like when I'm making my coffee, everything is like meditative. Everything,
yes.
like even when I'm reading, it's still
Mm.
like like I slow it down because I actually can read really fast. I'm like I usually read like 4 books at a time. I think we talked about this,
We did.
I but when I read, I'm like, I slow, especially in the morning, I just like to really take it in. So where normally I would read like 5 or 6 pages, I might read like 1 page, and I just sit with it. I sit with that page, whatever information comes,
Mm.
I might get inspiration from it and I'll think about it. And so anyway,
I
yes,
love
all
that.
of morning routines. There's a beautiful book by Ashley Ellington Brown called A Beautiful Morning. And she talks about it's a great book for your clients who are just starting off too.
Yes.
Use it often. I recommend it often. But it's a book that really helped me step into like really designing my morning routines for me. And
Oh, I love
oh,
that.
it's so beautiful. And so she interviewed like about 25 or so women and asked them how they spent their mornings. And they all gave different answers. There's people like Martha Beck in there and, just incredible
Wow.
women. Yeah. And so it's a very powerful book. And I always mention it when we talk about morning routines, but it was so cool. I had a full circle moment because I actually had her on the show. So I got to thank her for her book and also talk to her about just all the ins and outs of the book. So it was so cool.
That's amazing. I love that.
Oh, amazing moments on this podcast, let me tell you. But no, I want to ask you, like, are you taking on new clients? If people are interested in working with you, what does that look like? Do you have programs? Are you still doing one-to-one work with clients?
Yes.
Okay.
So I do work one-to-one with clients, but there is a prerequisite to do one-on-one sessions with me. And that is just kind of to clear what I like to say the clutter out of the way. A lot of times and I found this in myself, when you are looking for a coach, a mentor, a therapist, you have this idea in your head of like why you need them. And then quickly you realize that it's shifted to something else because you've been able to kind of clear through some of the muck that you had holding on to you. And so I created a 30-day program, and it's a self-care program. It's called the Art of Well-Being. And it truly allows you to step every day, building one on top of the other, to kind of clear out and start taking better care of you before you come to me and say, I need to work on this. Because maybe that is not what you really needed. And you've now work through that particular thing. So we want to kind of clear out the clutter first so that you are taking such good care of yourself, better than you were 30 days ago. And then we can actually work on what you really want to work on for you. Because again, you're the most important person in your life.
And the expert, I like to tell my clients, I'm like, you're the expert of you. I'm the
Yes.
expert of curiosity of you. So
That is such a great way to put it. I love that.
because I'm going to ask you really great questions that's going to help us peel back those layers, right? Like even deeper
Yes.
than you've been able to do on your own. But you are the expert of you. All the answers, our creator, God, you read the Bible. So, it's like you call your creator God as well. It's like God put the answers inside of us.
Yeah.
All the answers are there, but the problem is we have buried the answers with all of our stuff and our
Yeah.
muck. And so, what a great coach will do is they're doing the work on themselves. They have coaches themselves. So, they're constantly doing the work on themselves. So, then when they do hold up a mirror, that mirror is clear for you to see.
Yes.
Now, if they're not,
Yes.
and this goes for partners, this goes for, your bosses, your coworkers, et cetera, all your relationships, your familial relationships. If those people aren't doing the work, when they hold up a mirror for you, it's actually not going to be a clear mirror for you to reflect off of.
Right.
It's going to be a
Yeah,
reflection of their traumas mixed in with some of your stuff, but them too.
exactly. That's why I don't know the last time I didn't work with a coach myself. And I have multiple.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, I have mentors. I wouldn't be able
Yes.
to do the work I do without them, and I don't have them
No.
all the time, but I'm like, at any given moment, I can pull onto my mentors. Like, I think that's important, whether you have a mentor or coach, but someone who has done the work can be
Mm,
truthful with you, not tell you
yes.
just what you want to hear, but do
Right.
it through love, and not through ridicule or to try and make you feel bad, but really through love, and care for you. And so I think
Yeah.
a great coach is really going to come from a loving space, but a very truthful, honest space.
They will be very honest.
Yeah. And it sounds like that is how you are. So I love it. No, but if anyone is interested in working with her, I'll be sure to link all of her information below so you can reach out directly. But thank
Well,
you so
thank
much.
you.
This beautiful conversation today.
Oh, it was so wonderful chatting with you again.
You as well. No, thank you. Thank you for blessing this show. And everyone, as always, have an amazing Sunday. And do us a favor, leave your favorite part about this conversation in the comments below, or maybe even something that you learned new. Bye.